right punch, right foot forward. Wow, there it is. In my lovely visual aids again, right? So, if a person punches right hand, right leg, right, it's pretty obvious right now with the frisbees out, right, that's where he's weak, okay? So if I was doing a technique and I just came out here and did a single and I'm going to do a punch, can he absorb that pretty well? Yeah, because his legs are in line, all right? So how do I fix that? How do I fix that if I end up here on the outside as I punch? Huh?
The elbow.
Move the elbow? What were you saying?
I said I need to know this.
You need to know this. All right, so if I come here and instead of punching straight, if I just took my coffee cup and sloshed it to the left. I just sloshed my coffee cup to the left. That's all I did. So it doesn't matter if I was this way or if I'm this way, right? If I'm punching straight, he can absorb that all day long. Now watch him closely. I'm going to hit him really hard. Okay, watch closely. Do you see what he did? He braced for impact, right? His brain up here has been doing calculations since he first learned to crawl and then learned to walk. So it knows it sees something coming in this direction. It knows to brace for impact. So you kind of push it without even think about it. He didn't go, I'm going to push forward. His brain just did it, right? So I had my left on top of his right, and I came up, and I didn't even make contact, but he pushed his knees forward to kind of brace for impact and absorb it. So the last time I went this way, and I sloshed my coffee cup to the left. This time, if I just go straight, he absorbs it. But this time, I'm going to slosh my coffee cup to the left side. So I sloshed it to the missing table leg. Does that make sense? All right, that's what I want you to do with your partners now. You're going to get right, and you're going to do a right punch, and you're going to do a left punch, but you're going to slosh it to the missing table leg that's back here in the back. Make sense? Let's try that. So, if I've got my right out, we turn the paper.
This one.
Oh, I thought you were turning it towards me. I was like, thanks, man. So, am I lined up for a straight punch already that I don't need to do anything fancy with my coffee cup? Yes? Yes. So, it's easier to take them off balance if they're crossed like that and I happen to be outside. Now, if I was inside, I would have to slosh my coffee. Make sense? But I'm outside now and he's crossed. He's crossed. Now, because he naturally braces for impact, I am still on the moment of impact. I'm not gonna make as big of a movement, but I'm still gonna, like, if you squeeze your fist this way or this way, it'll put just a little bit of a curve into what you're doing. Does that make sense? Just a little bit of a curveball is what you're doing. I didn't call it this earlier, but he remembered from a prior seminar, we call this dermal redirection. The second I feel his skin or his clothing touching me, that means I've penetrated the dermal layer, the top layer of the skin, then I redirect. So straight gets a little bit of effect, but if I just give it a little bit of a squeeze to where I'm going to curve it to right about here. So I'm just going to give my hand just a little bit of a squeeze, and you see it really shoves his hips over. All right, so now I want everybody to do the same thing with a cross punch. So your right hand's forward, left leg is forward, or vice versa. All right? So there's this teaching style called backwards chaining. If you ever want to look it up, if you're an instructor, backwards chaining, you kind of work the end piece and then you work your way back. So I'm kind of reversing this now, all right? So our first move was a block and then a strike, or a block and then a strike. All right? She mentioned this earlier, so let somebody else answer. If I'm doing my block, single block, whether you think of it as an outside motion or an inside motion, how do I take him to a weakness? At 10 minutes? Is what you said?
Crossing.
Crossing? How you crossing?
Well, if you're coming across to the hip or shoulder or.
Okay. So, do any of you guys have something called Nahanshi Shodan or Teki Shodan? This motion? So, if I'm going right, if I just block this way, I'm going straight into him. If I go that way, see, he's already off balance. And then, when I put the strike, the punch into it, I've got him going this way and then this way, right? So if I'm going right, I do this Nahanshi Shodan kind of motion, and it twists him and loads him this way, and then I give that punch. Now, Nahanshi also does this motion. So instead of right, if it's left to right, then same deal. See, I've loaded him that way and started his off balancing, and then I come in there, and they end up, you do it hard enough, they twist and fall that way, right? Just off of a simple cover and strike motion, all right? So with your partner, just have the right leg forward, right arm, and practice that before you strike, or that before you strike, to get them going to the front dot. We'll do the back dot here in a little bit. So, same thing now, he's crossbody. So if I go here, what happens? I'm going to his table leg, right? If I do that same motion, right? So if I'm here, instead of going out, if I return, like Ikite, and then punch him, right? You can physically grab, but if you just hook, or Taika would usually hook this way, a little bit more advanced, but this is the easy one, right? If my right hand's up, I just take him here, and then he's directly in line for that other strike, right? So that can lead us into arm bars or whatever. If I do cross arm, it's the same thing. I can strike, pull him, and then do my strike. So play with that where you're crossbody now, where you're physically pulling either with your right or left to that front spot before you do your punch. All right? So here we're back to right, and if I'm coming up and striking with my right with an initial block, Taika would say blocks aren't blocks, they're strikes. And we don't even call them blocks in our style, we call them forearm strikes. Double forearm strike, single forearm strike, upper forearm strike. Just a little bit different philosophy, right? But if I want to go to this back dot, right? I want to go to that back dot off of this motion. Before I went to the front, this time as I impact in that area, I'm going to take a scoop of the ice cream now. Right? I'm going to take it towards that back. I take that scoop out. Now, normally, I had been punching this way. All right, so I'm going to give you a new kind of Oyata kind of philosophy. It's called economy of motion. This hand's going forward, right, to hit this. So I continue it forward because it's going right to where the belly is already, right? So he's in that position. Right? Instead of just hitting straight in here or taking them forward, maybe there's something there and I can't go that direction. I'm going to take a scoop of ice cream and then immediately follow through. So everything's going to be right hand. The left hand still, I want that left hand still up here so I can, do whatever else I need to do after this. But I'm taking them to that back and then I'm throwing that little curveball in there once I hit the belly. All right? Now it's the left hand. right? We did right hand, now I'm doing left hand. That was the previous technique. This one's gonna be kind of like that Nahachi thing again. I go here, my hand's right next to his belly, I just drive forward and slosh my coffee to the left. Makes sense? Let's try that. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about some other strikes, right? We've done some forearms and some belly deals. But I want to talk about up here in this lovely little area. You know, all the nerves in your arms come up into this, the legs come up, and it's called the brachial plexus. Never taking your thumbs and really dug in there. Feel free and find that spot where it's kind of sensitive on you, and that'll be the spot that we're targeting, all right? Are you taking a resting heart rate? But before we start doing this. So, before we actually get into a technique, I just want you to figure out what's the best way to strike that, all right? And so, my right side, my left side, and it's reversed for him, but if I'm striking with my right hand straight ahead in a mirror configuration, the weakness is pretty much straight ahead, but it's just with a little bit of a curveball to it. All right? So all I'm going to do is just a light little hammer fist here, and then I'm going to make that little three-dimensional motion as I do that. Big key on this is I want this other hand up when that happens. Right? I want this other hand up here as I do that, because what's going to happen to his shoulders? They're going to spin, right? And what's that make him want to do? Naturally, yeah. So if I am going to do that kind of deal that's going to throw this shoulder back and pull this shoulder forward, I want to have this hand up here so I can block, right? So that's our initial kind of strike. I'm going out that way, all right? If I was a little bit offline and now I'm striking this side, weakness is still back that way, but I've got to curve it more. It's got to be a larger angle. This is only curving maybe 15, 20 degrees. This side, because his shoulder is back closer to his feet, that's a pretty steep angle. It's probably 75, 80 degrees. So I'm here. Now, his free arm is probably in this area, so this isn't as important. I still want it out so I can do stuff with it, right? But I can grab a hold of that and just go that. So I'm going a little bit steeper angle. If I'm here, know where that is, 15, 20 degrees. Over here, 75, 80. I don't have my I forgot to pack my protractor, right? But I want you to do that. All right? That's right hand, his left is forward. Now, what if I go the opposite way on this hand, right? If I'm here and I curve into there, that's kind of a problem, isn't it? Yeah, that's something that I probably don't want to do. It's hard for me to block across my body there. If I come here, it's a little bit easier to do. Understand the concept? Right? So knowing this is my weakness covering, but this isn't bad here. I can come in and do that motion and I'll balance him very easy. Right? So play with that. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit more. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Tuite's definition of Kyusho, because it just came up, right? So actually, can I get you up here? Right? Yes. He doesn't really. He does not in his arms, and this is not uncommon. You should probably for every 10 people in the dojo, you're going to have a person like this, and it doesn't hurt him, right? He doesn't feel that pain. Tuite's definition of Kyusho is not what most people in the United States think of Kyusho. People think vital points. Tuite's definition was vital to the completion of the encounter, right? So if my goal, he's not feeling pain there, right? He's probably one of these guys I can hit him with a stick and he doesn't feel the pain, right? You should try that. But Tuite's goal and my goal in an encounter is not to make this person go ouch. It's to get him in a vulnerable position. And that's what Tuite thought Kyusho was. So if I want this hip to come here, like his elbow is out here so I can't get a good shot, right? To do what I want to do, the technique that I have in my head to do, right? I need to get his hip to rotate. I need to get him out of that protection mode, and I need to get him off balance. So even though he doesn't feel pain, if I make my little, he's a loser because he's attacked me, right? If I make my little L there and I strike that point, see what happens, right? He didn't feel any pain with that. And again, about 1 in 10 of your practitioners in the dojo will be that way. But you saw how much he moved, right? He moved considerably. He faced all the way to that mirror. That's what Tuite said Kyusho was. So if I do that motion, and then I come in, and I end the encounter because I rotated his body, that's Kyusho, right? So some other people went to some early seminars with Tuite and other people, Odo, and heard these terms Kyusho and Tuite and whatnot, and the Okinawan and Japanese terms didn't translate well into English, and Tuite is saying vital, it's vital. People translated that into vital points. Tons of books came out over the last 30, 40 years. You get older, time kind of slips. But the general American interpretation of Kyusho is you've got to hit a specific point. Right? You've got to hit a specific point. And Tuite was like, no. In fact, he would tell you, there's a point here, there's a point here, and there's a point here. If I do one of Tuite's techniques where I come up like this, which is what we were basically doing, what determines which one of these three that I hit? Huh?
Your distance.
Distance?
What you want
Stance?
to do.
Huh?
Maybe where you want to go.
Anybody else? Timing. Right? Tuite would say, if he saw the guy pulling his fist up to punch, his plan was to step out and put his arm here. He determines where I hit, not me. That was Tuite's philosophy. It's either this cluster, or this cluster. So if he's really fast, Tuite would hit bicep. If he's moderate fast, he would hit here around the medial nerve. If he was really slow, Tuite might catch knuckles and end up, in a different technique. So the definition of Kyusho is a little bit different than a lot of people. Tuite's definition of Kyusho is a little bit different. All right, does that kind of make sense? All right. A few more minutes. What I want you to do is just get them in that position. If you're starting to hurt, just push them to the front or push them to the rear at that point. I call this Kyusho consequences. What happens when I push them to the rear? Yeah, that's coming, right? If I go this way, I know that's coming. Tuite would deliberately do that to get an arm bar on the right arm, all right? So if I strike here and I do this motion, I know that's coming, and now I'm into a specific technique that I want to do, all right? So he was kind of a puppet master. He would do something to deliberately get the right arm to come. Now, if you do that and set that left hip back, has this got a lot of power to it? No, it doesn't. So it's easy to put an arm up there and carry that around, get an arm bar, a shoulder lock, whatever. It's part of being a puppet master. Just a couple more minutes on this, using the push if your arms are starting to get a little tingly, and then we're going to go on to something else later. And so, for something that this may take a little bit of time for coordination, we call this switch step. All right, so just left arm, throw the left arm around. That we can line up and show this a little bit. So it's not uncommon to be in this position where my right leg's back and that's the hand that I'm trying to hit with. All right, and I'm here trying to do this, but I've kind of bound myself up, right? Because my chest is actually facing this way. And one of Tuite's principles is called force efficiency, where whenever I impact something, whether it's a punch, hammer fist, any other thing we do, I want to impart my kinetic energy basically at a 90-degree angle to my body, like I'm doing a normal push-up. I don't want to be doing a wide push-up, and I don't want to be doing a narrow push-up on impact, right? Deflection's different matter, but on impact, when we're doing stuff, I want a good right angle from my chest on impact, all right? So I've got structure, I've got a frame on impact. So just for kind of the push version of this, if I've got this left leg forward and I'm trying to go here, I'm kind of bound up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pirouette around and then come in this way. All right, so my left foot is forward, it's kind of at this angle, but my chest is out that way. I want my chest to rotate, so it's called, we call it a switch step. I'm bringing this one around and this one's coming forward. As that happens, I want my impact to land slightly ahead of my foot. Anybody know why? Anybody want to guess? Yeah. Anything else?
Well, you always bring your weight to hand the strike. Makes it more painful.
If I weigh, I'm guessing, I haven't weighed this week because I've been out of town, roughly 150 pounds. If I plant my foot and strike, how much of my body weight is going into the target? Whatever my arm weighs. If I impact and drop, now 150 pounds is going into that, right? So, just for the slow motion version of this, we're making our little trap here. I'm going to come up, pirouette, touch, and land. You're going to do that until you get comfortable with it. Pirouette, hand touches, then foot hits the ground. So 1, 2, 3 is what you're doing. All right? Does that make sense? And then eventually I'm blocking this escape and I'm doing that motion. Right? So I'm landing on it and I curve just slightly behind his back leg. I did my 3D motion as well. Right? That's what I want you to eventually get to. Now, if your arms are too sore, then just keep doing the push method. But block, left foot, right hand, right foot. Just the timing of it. All right? Let's apply this to something else real quick. All right? So, we've been talking about Kyusho for quite a while. Now, let's say he tries to Will Smith me with his right hand. All right? And I catch it. Even the young kids knew what I was talking about. Wow! I didn't expect that. All right, so very typically, if you like flinch up or whatever on something like this and catch, right leg will be forward if you catch with the right hand. It's just a very typical position, kind of an instinctive, oh crap, yeah, oops, sorry, I'm used to little kids. If I end up catching the hand this way, little tip on this, make sure you push that pinky behind the ring finger. But if I come up and catch this way, I'm not lined up to do a wrist lock because my chest is this way and his wrist is this way, right? So what am I going to do? Right foot back, am I lined up? Right? And so that drops all of my body weight right into that. So if, again, you come out, oh, I caught Will Smith on the action there. I just take that pirouette and see how that's torquing his wrist as I go back, and now I want to put weight on it. Right? So just hand position, I'll go slow with no crank. As I come around, now the way somebody gets out of this is they lift their elbow. Right? So that's what my left hand is doing. Again, just like Kyusho, when I was striking, I was preventing escape. Same deal. I'm gonna chop the tire here. I'm gonna put another little L here. I'm just gonna block his elbow. Right? So yeah. So he can't release the kinetic energy that's landing into that joint block right now. All right. So try that with your partner. All right, so we're gonna do the same kind of situation. All of a sudden he comes up with Will Smith's. You can't remember when Will Smith didn't punch. But I'm gonna catch here, and then, again, this thing's close to me, so I wanna get to the outside real quick, so you see me shift, all right? So I can be this way, I can be this way. It doesn't really matter, I'm just controlling his elbow. Now I'm gonna continue that twist, but at the same time, I'm gonna push down in this crease and go to the ground. So this leg is gonna go away, and I'm gonna go down on my knee. If that makes sense to everybody, right? So I'm continuing to tighten. I don't want to spill any liquid on the ground. I want to tighten this. Also, I don't want to go on top of his forearm. If I push on his forearm, he naturally wants to push up. If I stay in that crease, he doesn't get that same sensation. So I can be in the crease, I can be in the crease, I can be in the crease. None of that. Your choice, user's choice, right? So I'm here, I'm controlling his elbow. The leg that's farthest is going to go away, and I'm going to continue to tighten that jar until he goes to the ground. Get out, get out, get out! All right? Once I got him on the ground, just for right now, I'm just going to tuck my leg behind his arm, and I'm going to hold him in this position, right? My thumb is pointing towards his face, and if he tries to get up or anything, all I do is push it that direction, right? And then he wants to go back down. Right? So I'm in that position, I've chopped his elbow. Again, I'm controlling his elbow. If I don't have anything here, he's going to lift that up and roll, and then eventually I won't be able to hold that grip. But if I keep this in here, I just got a little bit of my leg on top, but it's mainly blocking the back. I'm chalking his elbow so it can't get away. And I can hold him in this position. I can add in the other hand. I can grab my cell phone, call the police if somebody just attacked me. Whatever I got to do, and then we'll do an arm lock after this. There's also the Suzanne Summers version for the older people in the crowd, but the young kids are like, who's Suzanne Summers? But that thumb, just start pointing it towards their neck, and they'll stay in that down position. All right, let's try that. Don't go too hard and fast with your buddies. All right, so we did this motion again. We came up here, we're in there, we take them all the way down to the ground. Except once we get here, instead of chalking that tire and relying on the wrist lock, once he hits the ground, the chest hits it, I'm just going to straighten his arm and come in here. All right? So my shin is diagonal across his body. I got the wrist lock, elbow lock, and shoulder lock. All right? Let me do that one more time. You good, Luke? Deep breath. All right, so we're here. I'm chalking the tire. I drop him down. Once his chest hits, I just swing it towards his hips, and I come across. This leg, the near leg, is diagonal on top of him. The other leg is on the ground. His palm goes towards his foot. If I need extra pressure, I just use my forearm to bend his wrist. I can, grab fingers. I can even bend it the other way if I want to. It doesn't usually like that. Right? So it can be flexion or extension. Doesn't matter. All right? Let's try that. Because things never go as planned in a fight, all right? And I've seen some screw-ups during this. First of all, I want to say, good practice if you're learning the joint locks and learning this elbow control. We do things in class where the instructor just randomly yells north, south, east, west, whatever, and I don't know if your students typically know which way is north or whatever, but you can just say door, window, mirror, whatever. But that's that same technique or any of the wrist locks we do, I should be able to take them in any direction. So if that's north, I should be able to take him north. And then if the instructor yells south, I should be able to take him south. That's a great way, somebody randomly shouting out directions, the typical, 8 compass directions. It's a great way to start getting familiar and really truly learn how to control somebody. And of course, paying attention to the missing table legs. All right, So now we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna do the bitch slap, but we come here and we screwed up. Oh, I said
Now that the kids are gone.
now the kids go. Good timing there. That's before Will Smith. That's what we used to call it in the dojo. And then if kids were around, we said high five. At any rate, sorry about that. I screwed up and I didn't catch the hand. I caught here. All right. So all I'm gonna do is, everybody got Keon Yama or Taeon, right? Right. So I'm going to do that motion. I'm going to grab this way. And notice his pinky. See what I'm doing? I'm kind of doing a little palm heel lift. Turn and get that underneath lift. Right? I don't want to go straight and make this a complete U. I want a little bit of a twist to that. So I accidentally grabbed his wrist instead of his hand. I came up and did my motion here. And notice I'm here, kind of like in Pinon. I'm not here with my elbow up. The higher my elbow gets, the weaker I am. So I'm in this almost 45-degree angle, and that pinky is getting wrapped by that palm heel kind of motion. Now, what does the bad guy do? We discovered this principle earlier. If I grab tight, what do? They tighten up. So what do I need to do? Relax. Right? The second I relax that grab on his wrist, it relaxes his hand, and you get the reaction that you're looking for. Right? So I really didn't do much more with my left. I just relaxed my right hand a little bit. All right? Switch around so they can see it from this side. So I went, oh, and I just came right up here. This is kind of a U with a twist, right? It's a U with a twist, right? And I don't want, if I keep this tight, it's a wrist brace, and I don't want a wrist brace. I don't want a wrist brace at all. I want to be here, and I want to relax that, which makes him relax. And then think of that, we're not really in that moonshine kind of position anymore, but that's the rotation that I want, depending on where things are going, right? So right now, he's got his right leg forward. If I go straight this way, he can kind of push up with his legs. But if I redeploy that a little bit to where I'm facing the missing table leg, go back to where you were, or if I go here, right? But now I've got to kind of do that motion. I've got to use the bottom part, the part of my hand closest to my wrist, to go towards that missing table leg. So this is, if he switches his feet, this is easy. I don't have to do anything, right? But if he's got that right leg forward, then I may have to dip it a little bit, or I may have to go one way or another. But again, this is what gets it. If I start going straight over the top, if they're flexible fingers like her, you're never going to get any reaction. Her fingers probably, can you get your fingers all the way to your forearm? No. She's pretty flexible. I just thought maybe she could. Some people can take their fingers all the way. That does nothing. But if I get that 45-degree angle, I get that ulnar vine, the ulnar nerve, in the ulnar stylus head, and the bones in the finger, and then I start getting what I need to get to make this happen. Again, Tuite is a lot like, can I borrow you? She's very flexible, right? So just like Kyusho, Taika's goal was not to cause pain, right? She's very flexible, and not much happens pain-wise. You don't see her cringing or anything, but look at her body. Her body's moving. Her body moves. Her body moves, right? So Kyusho Tuite, the same thing. I'm getting a bind, and her hips are having to kind of follow that elbow. You hadn't figured that out. Wherever that elbow's pointing is what's happening with your hips. All right? So let's try that real quick. Hey, real quick, everybody. Because I covered it with two of you at least. Think about the way your body structure is and how you are strong. If you do a push-up, or if you kind of make your little triangle thing go like this, right? That's the hand structure, like I'm doing push-ups. All right? If I go way out here, if I go here, Like, how many of you, if you had to do so many push-ups for an employment screen, would do your push-ups as, no, you're gonna drop those elbows down where you're strong, right? You're strong down in here, in this range, right? Once you get past about 45, that's when you start getting weak. So I'm trying, everything Tuite did was about structure. My structure needs to be good. I need to destroy their structure, which is the first part of this class, was destroying the structure. So he pushes, and I went out here, and it came back into here. See how my elbow's down? I'm strong. If I come up, then I'm weak, and he can power out of it if he's stronger than me.
In theory.
Well, yeah. If you're quick enough, I mean, there's your kata motion, right? That's your kata motion. Yeah. So, you know, like right now, just for scenario, just because a couple people ended up missing this, we went into here. But Taika's Tuite, he never really grabbed. He just made a pivot point and did that motion. All right. Well, since I'm talking about it, in kata, do we place our hand? Does everybody got a kata that does this? All right. So when you do that motion, what, low, high? When you do that motion, do you set and then only move one hand? This one comes back, right? All right. So I come here. This hand's going forward. This hand, whether I'm completely wrapped or I'm just making a pivot point, this hand's coming back, and it's very important, right? I've created the tension with this top hand. This hand is pulling back, and when both of them simultaneously go opposite directions, that's a really bad thing to do to your training partners, right? Because yeah, you can get some physical therapy out of that. So don't by any means do that in here fast right now. But if I'm going forward and pulling back, it doesn't take very much. And I was going baby slow, and you saw how quick he's tapping out. All right, play with that in a few more minutes, and we'll skip on to something else. Taika always taught with principles, and we worked heavily on principles. And if you understand the principles, then you can apply his principles to any technique. Does that make sense? Well, any Tuite principle, any Tuite technique. All right. And so one of those principles was, if their arm is straight, they're strong. If the bad guy's arm is bent, they're weak. All right. Can I borrow you, Luke? So I'm just going to show this. This is a very standard wrist lock you see in a lot of systems, right? Arm is straight. However, we got into it and we came here. The arm is straight. I'm having to put a lot of energy to get any movement, right? If the arm is bent, it's nothing. It's butter. It's easy to do. That same Nikyo technique. As long as his arm is straight, he can resist me to an extent. But all I did was a little zigzag, and his arm bent, and he could not resist that. All right, so that's just one of the many principles. If you get their arm bent, you're going to have so much better time doing wrist locks. I'm going to talk about arm bars a little bit because Taika did them a little bit different than a lot of people. So we all know the standard arm bar that a lot of people do in just about every art imaginable. The problem with this standard arm bar position that a lot of people do is the opponent is still somewhat balanced, and they can still kind of push against you, right, and resist that. So one of Taika's tricks is this elbow. He did not do a 2-point arm bar, he did what we call a 3-point arm bar. So if I'm in this position, all I do is put that elbow there. So that's the first part of it. I take his balance, I put his balance over the leg that he's not fighting me with. Does it make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, so that's the first part. The second is 3D motion. natural humans, kind of like I showed you at the beginning of this, the first class here, anybody can resist linear, straight lines. But you throw a curveball at them, and their brain can't do the math because it knows how to push straight against something pushing straight against it. Everybody knows how to do that, right? From childhood, probably the first time you fell trying to learn to walk or crawl. You know how to push straight. But if I throw a curveball into my arm bar, one, his brain it doesn't know how big that curve is going to be. And it doesn't know when I reach a certain point that it's going to whip around to the other side. The other thing it's going to do, and you'll see in a moment, is it's going to isolate his shoulder and make it harder for him to resist. So our standard kind of getting the arm bar position, I take his balance, and now I'm going to take a step forward, and I'm going to put his hand, I'm going to row it. I'm going to row, both hands go forward. See where his shoulder is now? It's completely isolated. Now this hand stays where it's at, and this hand comes up. All right? Very non-linear arm bar. Very, very important. If I just, even being, we're about the same height, I think he's got a little bit more muscle mass than I do. Here, if I just try to pull my right hand up, just resist. Just see, I didn't even do the 3-point. I just did a little circle and you saw what happened. He was resisting fine as long as it was linear motion. The second I just put a little oval to it, he dropped to the ground. All right, so the first thing I want you guys to do is come up here. Everybody know where the funny bone is, that little soft notch right above the funny bone. I want your ulna bone in that, and then I want you to belly up to the bar. All right, I'm going to belly up to the bar. My elbow goes here, and I'm going to take his balance. I'm going to take a step forward and make him weak, and then lift only that outside hand. All right, I want you to do that a few times, and then we're going to play with it in relation to this. All right, let's do that. Oyata is 3-point arm bar. Hey, let me give everybody a tip real quick. All right, if I punch, what does my hand naturally do when I punch forward? Your other hand? This hand. What's this hand do? In relation to my forearm, what's this hand do? It what? It goes down. It milks. It does that milking action. What do I have to do to pull, retract my arm? What do I have to do with my wrist? This.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
It's natural human reaction, right? If your arm goes forward, to bend it, your thumb goes up. Does that make sense? Human reaction. You don't ever